Canonically, Mustard is easily among the most powerful trainers in the entire Pokemon world. He's a former champion, former gym leader, and one of the few trainers we've ever seen who has access to a legendary Pokemon, a very powerful one at that, in Urshifu. But by the time we meet him on the Isle of Armor, we encounter a past his prime Mustard. And I say that with all respect. In his heyday, this man was a force to be reckoned with. A high-level trainer who lived for his sport, I guess. But what if I told you Mustard maybe went a little too far? That hidden behind this whimsical old man is a figure who didn't just suffer great trauma, but may also very well be responsible for the death of his own career and his partner Pokemon. It may sound hard to believe, but there's a lot of evidence for it. Let's start though by taking a deeper look at Mustard's character and story. After all, I don't know about you, but I don't replay the DLC of Sword and Shield all that often, so refreshing your memory on Mustard as a person and his legendary history feels like an appropriate start to make. Okay, so the oldest thing we know about Mustard is that all the way back in his youth, he started out as the fighting type gym leader. Not a lot is known about this time, we don't know how long he did it for, what city he resided in, or even how old he was, and seeing as we know gym leaders can be very young, that is not exactly guessable either. However, based on his design, the fact he speaks of Opal as if she's around his age in the Galarian Star Tournament, and that he calls Peony, not exactly a child himself, a youngster, would put him around 80, maybe 70. And as far as we can tell from his history and trainer cards, that adds up. It does mean he presumably had his son Hyde when he was around 70 or 60, which is surprisingly late for a Pokemon character, but not impossible in our real world, and since Honey does appear to be significantly younger than Mustard, I think we can assume Mustard is around that age. Which means that he was about 20 to 30 when he rose through the ranks, defeating Opal, already Fairy-type gym leader at this time, to become Galar's champion. He held on to this position undefeated for 18 years, which is unparalleled. Like, we get hit over the head with Leon's unbeatable streak, yet Mustard's is even longer, the longest in history in fact. But as impressive as that is, it could have possibly been even longer, because according to his League card, Mustard lost his mojo after he lost his partner Pokemon, which of course means that it passed away. This caused Mustard's levels to drop, and not just because he presumably lost his ace, but also because he suffered the loss on a personal level. It of course isn't said outright that Mustard suffered from depression or other serious mental health issues, but it is literally stated his personality completely changed following this event, which I would say is the child-friendly version of exactly that. While his achievements started to wane, his popularity did not, but despite that, Mustard decided to retire sometime after when the chairman of the Pokemon League at the time suggested they rig a match in Mustard's favor so he'd win again. We don't know exactly how Mustard responded to that directly, whether he saw it as an insult or as a realization of how far he had truly fallen, but either way it instigated his decision to retire from Pokemon battling and instead pick up new hobbies, those being traveling the world and video games. During one of his trips he met Honey, who was the CEO of a trading firm at the time and on a business trip. The two fell in love, married and had a son, Hyde, and then his pain healed, presumably as a result of Honey's love, because Mustard got back into battling, at least somewhat. He bought a private island off the shore of Galar, named it the Isle of Armor, and founded the Master Dojo, which we later attend, as you probably know. While we don't know the exact timeline of things, it is worth pointing out that we know for a fact Leon used to attend the Master Dojo as well, presumably at a young age, since it is hinted at it being a while ago, which would mean the Isle of Armor and the dojo has been a thing for, let's say, around 10 years. That would line up with Hyde's age more or less, and that feels like an appropriate moment to settle down and buy a private island, as you do. After this had all been set up, Honey would eventually invent Max Soup while living on the island, and Mustard's reinvigorated love for battling would rub off on her, to the point she is now to be considered a powerful trainer herself, according to the dojo students. But okay, none of this is a dark secret yet. Mustard has had dark periods in his life, and he and Honey are part of the 1%, but that isn't a crime. What is a crime though, I presume, is running your Pokemon into the ground until they pass away. Which isn't outright stated to be what Mustard did, but it's definitely hinted at. When talking about his heydays as undefeated champion, his trainer card mentions his behavior and his spirit around this time. I quote, "His intense drive for strength meant he insisted on discipline, both in himself and in others. That Mustard took this very serious and was willing to go very far is also shown in his other big obsession: video games. Nowadays he absolutely loves them and has no problem indulging with them at all. But during his peak he completely abstained from them in order to not hurt his image with his fans. His rare trainer card mentions this. It shows how incredibly far Mustard is willing to go. He deliberately ignored what is described as an obsession just to focus on his training and craft. And he wasn't just as strict and disciplined for himself, but also for others. And those others can only mean his Pokémon. After all, by the time he meets Honey and has his students, he's much more mellowed out. I don't think that at any point in the story we see Mustard as that level of dedication from the player or Avery or Clara. As such, those others are his Pokémon, including the partner Pokémon that ended up dead. Now, of course we have seen Pokémon die in various ways before. We know old age is also a possible cause of death for Pokémon after all. It's not just killing or overworking or whatever. But seeing as it happened when Mustard was only around 40, maybe early 50, old age seems very unlikely to me. Look, we don't know how Pokémon lifespans work and we will probably never know, so it is impossible to say anything concrete about this, but I feel like we've seen too many trainers of that age and above who have never had to mourn the death of a partner for it to be old age. Especially when you keep in mind that Mustard's behavior completely changed after the death of his Pokémon. And that could of course be the result of losing his ace and the grief taking him over completely, but I'm not sure if that's the most likely scenario. It could be the case, especially since grief is a tricky thing and everyone handles it differently. It is possible that the loss of his ace, who I then presume is his childhood buddy or his starter or something, caused grief so heavy Mustard lost himself essentially, and continued like that until he met Honey and she reinvigorated his love for battling. That is possible, we can't rule it out. However, in the context of Pokémon, I think it is unlikely. Pokémon are certainly not dispensable, they're friends for life, so in that aspect it makes sense that one's death has a great impact. But on the other hand, I find it difficult to believe Mustard would suddenly also lose his interest in the other Pokémon he had, who are presumably also his friends, his team, his partners. He was a champion after all, he wasn't doing one-on-ones. And while we know he lost his edge in battling and lost his streak, we actually don't entirely know how much he lost his love for battling. We know his personality changed and he started losing, but he kept battling for presumably quite a while and only retired because of the chairman's proposal to cheat. He didn't retire because he didn't love battling anymore. But those two together, his personality changed and his results changed. Knowing what we know of Mustard's discipline beforehand and the results that brought, I think it is likely that is what actually changed. The death of his partner Pokémon caused his discipline to slip. He lost his complete dedication to the craft, and that caused his losses as well. And once again, it is possible his focus slipped because of his grief. But I can't help but connect the dots here and see a lot of evidence for the possibility Mustard lost his focus because he knows his focus is what drove his partner Pokémon to its early grave. We don't know the details, but it all lines up. It explains why his personality changed, which in turn caused his results to slip, even though he didn't immediately drop out of battling or anything. It also explains why he suddenly enjoys battling again and why he even has a new ace in Urshifu today. He has learned to take battling and training less serious. He doesn't have that immense dedication anymore. He has a son to raise, Pokemon Quest to play, and battles in the time he wants. Those are the lessons he learned from pushing his old partner too far. And if you think this is way too dark for the goofy old man that Mustard is, why not ask the man himself? A stream too clear is avoided by fish Pokemon. We need some darkness inside ourselves, he says, in context of the dark type Urshifu, but it also hints at his dark history. This is a man who has gone too far in his pursuit of strength, and he knows it. He knows he has gone too far, but he also knows it's what made him the champion and 18 years unbeaten. He needed that darkness inside himself in order to thrive, and even now he doesn't shy away from what he's done, even if he has learned from it. Now, researching all this made me very curious about one important question. What kind of Pokemon was Mustard's partner? The game truly does not even remotely hint at this, so this is full on theory mode, but I think it would be fun to try and deduce it. Now, one very clear tell is that Mustard is a fighting type expert. He was a gym leader once upon a time, and half of his team in-game is also fighting type, so let's start there. Probably the most obvious name would be Urshifu, seeing as that line is his entire thing, and what the Master Dojo revolves around with its focus on Kung Fu, but I don't know. I just cannot see Mustard having the same ace today that he presumably overworked to death some 30 years ago. It feels like he just tried to replace it, but it's clear from Mustard's personality that he learned a lot from losing his partner and it made him the man he is today. In that context, it makes no sense to just get another Urshifu and pretend the first one never happened. You could say that maybe this is a second go-around to right his wrongs, but I don't know, I feel like if Urshifu was intended to have been his ace, there would be dialogue to reference that. Not to mention that Urshifu's dex entry mentions it lives in a faraway region, hinting that Mustard probably came into contact with it during his years traveling the world, rather than when he was a child and just starting his battling career. So yeah, for me, that puts a line through the number one candidate. What else we got? Well, when I was looking at Urshifu's Sword and Shield dex entry, I came across another fighting legendary Pokemon that was not on my radar, but received a very interesting new entry in Sword and Shield. And that is Marshadow, who's of course a mythical from the generation before, and as such was definitely not introduced just to fit with Mustard. But this dex entry is new and, well, it's a strange coincidence if it isn't intentional. By slipping into the shadows of a martial art master and copying their movements, this Pokemon learned the ultimate technique. Does this mention Mustard outright? Of course not. But does it resemble in a way what happened with his partner? Well, yeah, it does. Marshadow follows Mustard, who was certainly a martial arts master. His regime, his discipline, his movements, and learns the ultimate power, i.e. goes unbeaten for 18 years. The two even share some design elements. Mustard wears a green jacket that is similar in color to Marshadow's Zenna form, and Mustard's hair and pronounced eyebrows, as seen in battle, resemble the three curls, I want to say, on top of Marshadow's head. Now, of course there are holes in this theory, I'm not too proud to admit that. We just pointed out why Mustard finding an Urshifu when he was presumably still young is unlikely. And the same definitely goes for Marshadow as well, who may not have any place of origin listed, but it's definitely not common in Galar, let's put it that way. There's also nothing to directly tie the two together, and I feel like it's worth pointing out that Marshadow wasn't added with the Isle of Armor DLC, but rather with the base game. So if the connection between Marshadow and Mustard is intentional, it must have been created before the DLC was Game Freak's main focus, post-release. But hey, purely based on the minimal evidence we do have, I think Marshadow is an interesting shout, so I thought I'd bring it up. But yeah, that's about as far as Mustard's story goes. What do you think happened in his past? Did he truly push his own partner to the edge? Or is he innocent, simply bereaved of his dear Pokemon? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokemon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.